begin the first in a series of hearings conducted by the joint fiscal committees of the legislature regarding the governor's proposed budget for fiscal year 2016-2017. The hearings are conducted pursuant to Article 7, Section 3 of the Constitution, and Article 2, Section 31 and 32A of the legislative law. Today, the Assembly Ways and Means Committee and the Senate Finance Committee will hear testimony concerning the budget proposal for the transportation. I will now introduce members from the Assembly, and Senator Young, Chair of the State Finance Committee, will introduce members from the Senate. I've lost my list there. We're joined by Chairman David Gant, Michael Cusick, and Bill Senek is with us, and Assemblyman Oakes.
Yes, we're also joined by Ranker on Transportation, Dave McDonough.
We've also been joined by Assemblyman Phil Steck. Senator.
Thank you. Thank you and good morning. And I'm delighted to be here today, especially with my esteemed colleague, Chairman Denny Farrell, and look forward to working with everyone. Also very happy that Assemblyman Bob Oakes is here and my colleague, Senator Liz Krueger, who is ranking member on the Senate Finance Committee. I'd like to introduce members from our conference, and we have Senator Tom O'Mara and Senator Michael Ransenhofer with us today. I'm sure that other colleagues will be joining us very shortly. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Senator Liz Krueger.
Thank you, and I welcome Senator Young to her first budget hearing as the finance chair. Some of us have done this more times than we can remember. I know that Denny and I are looking forward to working with Senator Young, and I'm joined today by Senator Martin DeLon, the ranker on transportation, and Senator Tim Kennedy from Buffalo.
And we'll have to go out for spaghetti once the hearings are over to celebrate.
Touche.
Before introducing the first witness, I would like to remind all of the witnesses testifying today to keep your statement within your allotted time limit so that everyone can be afforded the opportunity to speak. I will now call the first witness, New York State Department of Transportation Commissioner Matthew Driscoll. Good morning, Mayor.
Good morning, and good morning, everyone. Chairperson Young, Chairperson Farrell, Chairperson Gant, and members of the Legislative, Fiscal, and Transportation Committees, thank you for this opportunity to discuss Governor Cuomo's executive budget as it pertains to the Department of Transportation for the 2016-17 state fiscal year. I'd like to acknowledge Chairperson Robach and Marcelino, who are not yet here, but I suspect will be as well, for their leadership. The most important function of the department is to ensure the safety of the traveling public. This is accomplished through conducting bridge safety assurance inspections, targeted and comprehensive bus, truck, and freight rail inspections, providing traffic signal maintenance, and performing winter snow and ice control. And as you might expect, snow and ice control is one of the more challenging responsibilities for the department, given the unpredictability of weather patterns. Last year, on the heels of several years of extreme winter weather, Governor Cuomo directed state agencies to assess and to strategically augment their capacity to more effectively respond to these types of emergencies. To enhance DOT's capabilities, the governor provided the department with $50 million for new winter storm equipment through the New York Response Initiative. This new equipment, including new graders, loaders, and plow equipment, is being deployed in every region of the state, with an emphasis on areas that are typically hit by the hardest winter conditions. Earlier this month, the governor unveiled a bold and comprehensive $22.1 billion transportation plan to modernize and enhance New York's transportation infrastructure, including historic investments in roads and bridges, freight goods movement, and upstate airports. Specific to the Department of Transportation, the governor's proposal provides the framework for a new, unprecedented $20.1 billion five-year transportation capital plan. This new commitment builds upon $18.3 billion in core DOT funding by adding $1.8 billion in new resources. The executive budget provides significant new state investments during the state fiscal year 2016-17 to improve New York's transportation system, enhance the system's resiliency, create jobs, and deliver record levels of operating aid for transit systems. The proposal includes more than $4.3 billion in new DOT capital program funding, an increase of 17%. Of that amount, more than $3 billion in new funding is provided to support the department's highway and bridge program. DOT's budget also provides $438 million in additional funding for local highway and bridge projects under the Consolidated Local Streets and Highway Improvement Program, better known as CHIPS. $39.7 million for the local matching share of federally aided projects under the Marchielli program, and an unparalleled $5.2 billion to support the operation of local transit systems, including increases for upstate transit. The governor has also highlighted several high-priority initiatives that will form the core of the state's transportation plan, many of which will provide local governments with unprecedented access to transportation funds. These proposed strategic investments include Pave New York, a new $1 billion initiative that will provide $500 million to help municipal governments replace, rehabilitate, and maintain vital local bridges, and invest $500 million in state-owned bridges as well. Bridge New York, a new $1 billion initiative that will invest $500 million to pave local roads and $500 million to pave state roads. A new $500 million extreme weather infrastructure hardening program to make safety and resiliency enhancements to roadways across the state that have proven to be susceptible to flooding and other extreme weather-related events. And $200 million to an upstate airport economic development and revitalization competition to accelerate investments in commercial passenger and cargo service airports. As a former mayor, I recognize that local roads and bridges matter. Too often, however, local governments are forced to make difficult choices between repairing and replacing infrastructure. Working with local governments, the department has revised its project planning and development policies so that municipalities can implement cost-effective project solutions. At the same time, the department will work with municipalities to develop strong asset management practices through enhanced training, technical assistance, and deployment of innovative technologies. By working cooperatively, investments in transportation infrastructure will facilitate economic growth, leverage private investment, and create new jobs across our state. In closing, let's not forget, the work we do is critical, and the challenges we face are very real. Through open and continuous dialogue, collectively, we will deliver the transportation system that our residents deserve and is necessary to maintain New York's position as the Empire State. I want to thank you for your time, and I'm available to address any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. We've been joined by Assemblyman Brennan. First, the question, Assemblyman Gant, Chairman, Transportation.
Thank you very much, Chairman Farrell. Welcome, Commissioner. Glad to see you here. Glad to see that this may be a different year for both of us here in New York State and across the country. As you know, for years now, we have not received that which was necessary for us to run the kind of programs that we believe that are necessary here in New York State. I will ask the questions that I always ask, and that's exactly where do we stand at with efficient roads and bridges? Are we on the upside going up, or are we coming down? And what do you plan on doing for us in terms of doing that?
Well, I think that overall we've been in somewhat of the same place for some time. But I would suggest to you that with the new program that the governor is announcing, Bridge New York, it's really going to make a significant difference both for local and state-owned roads. $500 million will go a long way in helping to make sure that not only are they maintained, but also rehabilitated across the state of New York. So I feel good about that.
Do you intend to put out a schedule of projects that are to be done? Because quite often in the past we said these big things, And those projects just never get done for the locals. And I think probably others here who sit here with me will have the same questions that I have in terms of that.
Right. So, no, I want to stand behind what I say. I've made a kind of a practice of that throughout my career. Again, I think this program is going to make a significant difference that the governor has announced. We are doing an assessment across the state on both the local side and the state side for bridges. We will be developing a competitive program based on needs of those bridges across New York State.
Mm-hmm. Now, when we deal with the local programs, I know that each year I get questions from the locals dealing with CHIPS and Market Sale in particular, because those are the programs that are much that are important to them. Are we planning on doing any increases, some substantial increases? Are we planning on doing any substantial increases dealing with those particular programs?
Yeah, well, I've spent a significant portion of time, making sure that I listen to the locals, and I understand firsthand, having been there, the challenges that they face and the people that you and I both represent. As I mentioned, Pave New York is another program that the governor has put forward in this budget, another $1 billion program that is going to provide additional resources to local governments. So that local governments will have the flexibility, in addition to the CHIPS funding and the Marchielli funding, to be able to augment their budgets. So they will see an increase. It's formula-based. They will see an increase in that aid in this budget.
Will we also see improvements in the condition of the roads and bridges? Because I think that's what's most important to us.
Yes, of course. Right. I don't want the Department of Transportation, and I know the governor doesn't, to spend money that doesn't make a difference. We will see well over 200 bridges improved, and we will see over 1,300 miles of roadways paved.
The problem I have with just that blanket statement is that in the past, we have said that. However, we've found out that it always gets boxed up someplace, whether it be we, the state, do not abide by that which we've always said we will do, and that is to have on a 50-50 in terms of your hiring people, engineers, and your shop. Because a consistent complaint I get is it gets bottled up at the state level. And when I talk to those who represent those individuals who are at the state level, they tell me the problem is they didn't hire the staff they were supposed to hire. And over the years, I've consistently asked the question, are we going to hire those staff members that we need to hire to make sure that we get the work out the door?
Yeah, well, so I can't speak to the past, and I won't. I can only speak about what I'm suggesting to you, and that is moving forward. No. I don't believe that the staffing issues are the problem. I think that, and what I mentioned was the policy change that we've made here. In previous administrations, the policy dictated to locals how some of their federal dollars might have been utilized on local roads. We are not doing that anymore. We are giving that decision-making ability back to the locals who know it most. We will be working very closely with the local governments, as I mentioned, workshop training, assistance, the kind of things that the department can bring to help create more efficiencies with the Department of Transportation and local governments. I believe that we are adequately staffed to handle all of those.
When can we expect that you will have for us a schedule of those kinds of projects that we're talking about?
So we're going through that process now, probably late spring.
Late spring. Can I count on you to get at least to my office so I can see what's happening? Because obviously there are those of us who live upstate and there are those of us who live downstate, and we know what those important projects are in our particular area. So I'd like to get a copy of those lists. When we have those
assessments done, we will make those available.
Okay. Mr. Farrell, rather than have you beat me up today and
No, you can go.
make me stop, I will stop here so that others can have.
3 more minutes.
Huh?
You got 3 more minutes.
3 more minutes?
Yeah,
Now, the feds, I see this is the first time that in a long time that the feds have had it's called Transportation Fast, is that it?
Right, the
This
new
year?
surface transportation bill. Right.
Okay, in a long time that we've had dollars that we could literally count on. Where are we at with that?
Well, I'll agree, it's good news. It's the first long-term plan they've passed in 10 years. And really, the benefit of that is largely planning, that it allows not only the state, but local governments to plan accordingly. There's been some increases. Candidly, they're at about the rate of inflation at best. But nonetheless, that program includes some new things as well. Highways of significance for freight movements of goods and services. There are additional kind of attributes that are in the FAST bill. But the good news is we have a 5-year bill. The good news is we have 5 years that local governments and the state can plan accordingly based upon that bill.
So we should, over the next 5 years, have a workable plan that we can hopefully all live with, and your office would be willing to work with us because there's always some kinks in the armor when it's all said and done.
Yeah.
So I hope that we can work together to make sure that this state of New York, which has always been at the forefront of safety,
Right.
to make sure the people in our state are safe.
You can count on that.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mrs. Chair. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Chairman. We've been joined by Elisa Heidemann, Assemblyman Kaminsky, and Shelley Mayer. Senator?
And we also have been joined by Senator Diane Savino.
And we also have Assemblyman Michael Dendecker. I got close. Okay, there he is.
So, Chairman, I would like to ask some questions now.
Yes.
So welcome, Commissioner. It's great to have you here, and look forward to your answers to some questions. It's wonderful that you have your background in municipal government, because I think that gives you a great perspective as to why infrastructure is so critical to the people of New York State. And as you know, with the transportation plan, traditionally, it's been an approval of a multi-year plan that included the adoption of both the DOT and the MTA 5-year capital plans, and that has not occurred since 2011. And so, as you know, the Senate Republican Conference has been very concerned about having relative parity between DOT funding and the MTA, and actually having a defined 5-year plan put forward. So one of my questions is the DOT going to be providing the legislature with a 5-year plan? Because I believe very strongly that we need that information to move forward.
Yes, we are developing the 5-year plan.
And when do we expect to see the 5-year plan? Because I don't believe that we have the details right now on it.
Right. Well, I would suspect that it'll be at the conclusion of the budget season.
At the conclusion of it, or during?
Well, sure. I mean, that's a conversation between the legislature and the executive, but we are building a 5-year program.
And what do you anticipate, Commissioner, would be included in this plan? So
Well,
what if projects, needs assessments, funding details, et cetera?
Well, you know, as I mentioned, Bridge New York and Pave New York. There's increases for mass transit in upstate New York as well, which is significant and I'm sure welcomed. There's investments in rail. So in a comprehensive way, the investments that the DOT will be making as part of the transportation plan will also help support economic development initiatives across the state. It's important that we think of how we not only maintain our system, but build upon it, that we do so, that it connects with economic development opportunities that are already either in place or yet to come.
Okay, so it's a work in progress, you're saying right now? Okay. With the details of the $2 billion in Thruway Authority funding being included in the 5-year plan that you're just referencing, or is this funding just included in the overall $22.1 billion DOT capital program number? Very concerned about that, because I think for the first time, there's Thruway funding included as being counted as parity toward the 5-year plan for DOT. So could you give us some more information on that?
Well, what I can tell you is that the governor's budget is unprecedented in terms of the support for the Department of Transportation. In this budget, there's $20.1 billion for a 5-year plan. That's up from 18.3. As I've said and outlined, there's some new initiatives here that really, I believe, wholeheartedly are really going to benefit local government. That will make a significant difference, particularly the Bridge New York and the Pave New York program.
But traditionally, Thruway Authority funding has not been included in the parity numbers. Is that correct?
To my knowledge, but I can't speak to the Thruway. That would be a question for them. They are receiving $2 billion.
Right. So, but I guess what the issue is that these funding sources for the Thruway Authority haven't been included as parity in the past, and it looks like under the governor's proposal that they are included and added, and so does that skew the parity issue?
Well, to me, as I mentioned, I'm charged with operating the Department of Transportation, and the unprecedented level of funding is going to go a long way, more than it ever has before, to not only maintain the system statewide, but enhance it. So I'm very pleased with the $20.1 billion budget for the Department of Transportation.
Thank you. I wanted to touch on the transit operating assistance.
I'm sorry, I couldn't
The
hear you.
transit operating assistance, okay. There's an overall increase of nearly $224 million, and the MTA would receive $201 million increase, while downstate non-MTA transit systems would receive $17.4 million increase. And both of those are attributable to an increase in downstate dedicated revenues. Upstate transit systems would receive a $5 million increase, which would be provided from the Dedicated Mass Transportation Trust Fund. Unlike downstate, upstate transit dedicated revenues continue to decline. And so my question is, do you believe that there is a structural funding problem in regard to upstate transit? And if so, what steps can be taken to ensure that upstate transit operators, including the systems in Syracuse, Buffalo, Rochester, and Albany, have more reliable and predictable funding?
Well, I would say for upstate transit, there's an increase this year. It's going to be providing a record for upstate, $194 million. So that's a significant increase over last year. It also includes $5 million for additional capital. So in terms of upstate transit, I think that is going to make people feel pretty good to see those types of increases to help them continue the very important service that we need in upstate New York.
Will there be a multi-year capital program for upstate transit included in the 5-year DOT capital plan?
The transit plan is incorporated into our 5-year budget.
It will be. Okay, thank you. You touched on the Bridge New York program and the $1 billion Pave New York program for state and local roads and bridges from new and existing DOT funding. So how will these, I think Assemblyman Gant touched on this, but how will these projects be selected?
Okay, so the Bridge New York program is competitive. So there's $500 million for local bridges and $500 million for state-owned bridges. The state owns the majority of the bridges, by the way. It'll be based on, not geographic, but it'll be based on conditions, frequency, use, how often a bridge may be used. That scoring is being developed as we speak. It's not complete, but that's how that'll work. On the Pave New York, there's a formula that will dissipate those funds to local governments and to state-owned roads.
So it's strictly scoring by DOT. Will there be any local input on these projects? Will local governments be able to weigh in?
Well, on the Bridge New York, they'll certainly want to compete for those, and any requisite information that we would need, we'd ask of them, but the decision will rest with the DOT scoring system.
Thank you. And finally, and I've got 2 minutes and 58 seconds left, but the executive proposes a $200 million upstate airport competition,
Right.
which would provide $40 million in funding to 5 eligible upstate airports. and I believe there are a total of 74 airports. And so I guess one of the questions might be and is, when would this program be initiated, and actually over how many years also?
Well, it's going to be initiated right away. We're developing the criteria now. You're correct, there's 74 upstate airports who will develop plans and submit them to the Department of Transportation. There'll be 5 winners of $40 million each. But I would say this, too, as someone who had an airport under my watch. The plans that folks develop, whether they win or not, are useful plans going forward. Because airports are constantly changing, the economies of airports are changing. So I think the competition is a good thing, but there will be 74 airports who are eligible to compete. There will be 5 winners of that competition.
What happens to the remainder of the airports? There will be funding available for ongoing maintenance issues?
Yes.
Is that right? There's still the traditional, what is it, $6 million?
There's the traditional, we have $5 million will still be available for local match for the federal airport programs, et cetera.
What is the goal of the competition? Are you looking to regionalize and maybe eliminate some of the airports that exist? That's a question that I'm concerned about because, as you know, upstate is very vast, and there are miles and miles sometimes in between airports. So could you address that?
Yeah, there's no desire to eliminate the airports at all. As you point out, upstate New York is very fast, and communities need their airports for services to people in industry. It's really designed to help continue to spur economic development opportunities in upstate New York. We live in a changing environment. The global economy is changing every day. Next year, or this year rather, you'll see the opening of the Panama Canal. That's going to dramatically change how goods are shipped and how they're received and how they're distributed throughout not only New York, but other states as well. So I think, the genius of the plan is to really help prepare people to meet those challenges and to really help people figure out how on a regional basis they can utilize an important asset, which an airport is, to help further their economic mission.